Black Op Radio presents 50 Reasons for 50 Years. Why the Warren Commission may be the greatest fraud perpetrated on the American public. Now your host, Len Osanek.
This week's episode, Richard Case Nagell. Jim Garrison described him as the most important witness in the JFK assassination. But you won't find his name anywhere in the Warren Commission report. Author Dick Russell has conducted exhaustive research on Richard Nagell.
My name is Dick Russell, and I'm the author of a book called The Man Who Knew Too Much. It's a lengthy investigation of the Kennedy assassination and what I believe was a conspiracy in that tragedy that took place on November 22nd, 1963. The main focus of the book is a guy named Richard Case Nagell, whom I knew and interviewed on a number of occasions between 1975 and his death in 1996. Nagell was well known to the intelligence community. He was, in fact, an agent of the CIA and also a double agent for the Soviet either KGB or GRU. Nagel had been the youngest soldier promoted to captain during the Korean War and gone on to a career in military intelligence. He had first met Lee Harvey Oswald in Japan in the late 1950s when he was stationed there, and later was assigned by the intelligence agencies to monitor Oswald's activities after Oswald came back from Russia in 1962. What transpired next was Nagel's involvement with Oswald in a small conspiracy that he was monitoring to assassinate President Kennedy. According to Nagel, Oswald was involved in this conspiracy as an intelligence guy, but whether he was really loyal to the Cubans or not is questionable. This is not to say the Cubans did it. The conspiracy that Nagel was involved in involved elements of the American intelligence community and anti-Castro Cuban exiles who were posing to Oswald as pro-Castro agents, and had supposedly convinced him that if he took part in this assassination, he would be welcomed in Cuba as a revolutionary hero because Castro was retaliating for the CIA's plots against him. Now, what happened eventually was that Nagel took himself out of the picture. He was ordered to either convince Oswald that he was being set up, that this was a phony deal, or to kill him in Mexico City toward the end of September 1963. Instead, Nagel walked into a bank in El Paso, Texas, on the 20th of September, shot 2 holes in the ceiling of the bank, and intentionally got himself arrested and taken out of the picture. Now, this story may sound fantastic, but there's evidence to back it up. And of all the people that I interviewed about the assassination, and there were many, including many who claimed to have had involvement, Nagel was, I believe, one of the few that was totally legitimate. When he was arrested by the FBI, and he made sure it was the FBI, in the bank in Texas 2 months before the assassination, Nagel had on him 2 notebooks, in fact. And in one of them had the address and the phone number in Mexico City of the Cuban embassy that Oswald had been in touch with, and also listings for the Fair Play for Cuba committee that Oswald was part of. Nagel also had, and this was really astounding, he had in his possession a military ID card that belonged to Oswald. And in fact, it was called a Uniformed Services Identification Card, and the Dallas police had seized this from him after the assassination. The card that the police took from Oswald had a Department of Defense overstamp on it. The card in Nagel's possession, with the same number, had a different photograph, a different signature, and no Department of Defense overstamp. Now, in those days, you couldn't just fabricate these things on a computer. There was no computer to do that. And so somehow, Nagel was involved with Oswald in this intelligence operation that involved him having different uniformed services identification cards. This was enough to convince me, the notebook and the ID card, that Nagel was for real. What happened eventually to Nagel was he was railroaded through prison for 4.5 years for that alleged bank robbery. When he came out, he was arrested on a train in East Germany and apparently taken to Moscow, where he was debriefed by the Russians over what had happened. Eventually, he died mysteriously in 1996, this very day that the Assassinations Record Review Board had sent a subpoena to him to find out what he could tell them about what had happened. That day, he was found dead in his home of an apparent heart attack. He is one of the leading witnesses, and many of them have disappeared and died over the years, and I think a very important link to understanding what really happened to President Kennedy on that terrible day. And I've chronicled all this in my book, The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Stay tuned for the next installment as we expose week after week 50 lies the Warren Commission would like you to believe.